بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. يعطيكم العافية جميعا. Our leader today is الأستاذ أحمد حكيم, and سعيدين جدا بوجودك. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you for being our leader's mic today. As usual, I'll start with the first question, اللي هو tell us a little bit about Ahmad the person. أحمد الإنسان.
So how do I identify? أنا أحمد هاشم حكيم, ولد هاشم وسامية, أخو مي, زوج جولي, وأبو دانيا وزيد. So most of the time, that's how I sort of identify and see myself as I go around.
ما شاء الله. طيب. Second question will be, what shaped Ahmed, the leader?
So I was lucky, I was very fortunate من رضا ربنا علي إنه the leadership lessons and coveting came very early in the game. I think this is worth telling, and I think it's interesting. I hope you and the viewers find this interesting. So watching Abuya Ummi early on in the game, a lot of leadership tips and tricks were communicated inherently, innately, not directly, just by watching how they embraced complexity, how they went about their lives, how they coped with the incredible changes اللي كانت بتصير في المملكة in comparison لوقتهم وغيره. I think the real tipping point was when I was 9 years old. So أبويا قال لي listen, إحنا على قد حالنا, ما في سفر في الصيف, we don't do things like other folks do, but I need you to just humor me, جرب الصيفية هذه, and let's embark on a trip that involves lots of payments, which was a great incentive. So تجي معايا الشغل, حطني في قسم في 3 سيدات كانوا يتكلموا انجليزي, ما يتكلموا عربي, وانا ما كنت اتكلم انجليزي, وقال لي تكون مراسل قهوجي, office boy عندهم for a particular amount of money. إذا تقرأ حزب كل يوم, كل تختيمة قرآن ب1000 ريال. إذا تنسخ الصفحة الأولى والأخيرة من جريدة الشرق الأوسط بالنسخ والرقعة, there's money at the end of that. Anyway, suffice to say, it was a money festival all summer long based in instilling قيمة العمل وقيمة الاستاتيكس في الخطوط والفنون والتعلق الدائم بالمصحف وبالقراءة. It went from there to 200 vocabulary words بالspelling والمعنى حقهم, also for 1,000 reals, etc., etc., etc. But there was always a next level, a grander target or هدف لده كله. It wasn't just a meaningless exercise, so I hope I'm not boring you, but I'll tell you exactly how this ended up going in the long term. كل المداخيل اللي صارت من الفرنج والسايد activities في الصيفيات هذه were turned into سبايك ذهب وجنيهات جورج. لأنه according to my mom, who's an incredible, lovely lady, these were gonna evaluate later in life. The end game was you collect as many of these over working every summer, so then you can purchase your own car when you're done with high school. And the lesson here also was follow through, was persistence, was DIY with intellectualism, مع إضفاء قيمة العمل, all in one space. Also, that gave me another vantage point because I was lucky enough إن شفت والدي الله يرحمه and how he dealt with his teams and how he ran his brand of leadership and how he cared about people he worked with, people that worked for him, and people he reported to, and so I was lucky that way.
طيب, perfect. Then tell us, صراحة ما شبعت من أحمد the person, يعني شوية أنت اديتنا كده بروفايل كتب في تويتر. I need شوية عن أحمد. Give us more about يعني حقيقي, what are your hobbies, who are you يا أخي?
Look, I'm a lover of art, creativity. I'm a fanatical aesthete. I think I constantly strive to connect with everyone around me through intellectual entertainment. There's a lot of things that I've wanted to learn how they work in life, and I persevere to do them. I'm a songwriter, I'm a composer, I do film music, I produce records for other artists, I critique artworks. I'm constantly involved, collaborating or dabbling with something that has to do with some form of artistic thing or another. I'm an avid reader. I don't know, I can't even recount how much I read from the time I was 9 or 10 years old until at least 40 years old in both languages. Right now I'm polishing 2 because I like to work on 2 or 3 at the same time. بسوي قراءة ثانية متأنية لعدة الصابرين وذخيرة الشاكرين حق ابن القيم. It's an amazing book. I really highly recommend that everybody should have a look at it. وفي نفس الوقت slowly I'm working on Ride of a Lifetime حق Robert Iger. He took the helm of Disney in a turbulent period. There's a lot of perseverance and embracing complexity and leadership lessons to be had from that.
Okay, أحمد ليه ما تحب تسوق؟
Okay, I didn't see that coming. So I haven't driven a car in almost 9 years now. And yeah, it's great. I'm loving every minute of it. So I'm an Uber and Kareem guy. I think I started pretending in the Metropolitan في السعودية became what it's going to happen. So I was giving myself a dress rehearsal in advance. Look, I was never good at it. بس كانت علوم مرجلة و keeping up with the Joneses و culturally في ال 80s كيف ما تسوق. And I never liked it, and I always experienced some form of mild anxiety around it. And على طاري اللي كان أخونا ريان بيقولوا in a moment of truth and self-reflection and honesty, I was like, you know what? I might be putting pressure on myself and endangering others or etc. I don't need to do it. It's costing me peace of mind. I can do without it. It took a while, but it became a differentiator. It gives me lots of time to read, review PowerPoint presentations, go through emails, and
time to reflect.
Time to reflect, and somehow بقلل الpressure for 1 or 2 more vehicles في الشوارع. You're welcome.
شفتوا يعني كان بيقول لنا مين أحمد، قال لنا سطرين وبعدين حق تويتر، عارف اللي يكتب كيف تويتر. طيب, thank you Ahmed. My next question will be, tell us about your career path. So basically, where did you start, and where are you today?
So it's a cautionary tale. So I think it could be read in multiple ways. For you, for your kids, for anyone watching this. Either if you end up being like me, don't fret. It worked out. If you can't hack it, don't do what I did. So it's really a very eclectic hodgepodge journey. So I'm not a visual person. I'm highly auditory and oral and written. I use my right side of the brain heavily, so I'm every engineer's nightmare, so to speak. And I really had a huge hankering for how things work and going into ecosystems and understanding DNAs of teams, of people, of things. So at the outset, because I had been in the work stream since I was 9, every summer. So working environment was not strange to me after high school and university. And I decided to be a pilot because I've always wondered what that was going to entail and what that was going to look like. So many people don't know this, but I was, other than the driving, I was in pilot school for a year with Saudiya. And then again, in a moment of honesty with myself, I thought, I'm young enough, I still have choices, I'm not stuck. It didn't turn out to be the right thing for me. I can afford and I owe myself to make that brave switch now, regardless of the shortlisting and the glamour, etc., etc. And that began a whole Forrest Gump-like running campaign where I really wanted it to be meaningful. I really wanted to have impact. I wanted to be impacted, and I wanted to leave impact on people in everything I've done. And it took a lot of searching before I found my stride. I also I went sort of against the grain. So I went with private sector when things were okay. Then I made the leap to public sector قبل الرؤية and before everything, when it wasn't really that fascinating. But I had a hunch at one point public sector was gonna be light years ahead of private sector, and it happened 4 years after or 5 years after I had joined. So I wanted to understand the stark difference between working within the government and within the private sector, and that took me on an incredible ride. الآن in hindsight بحاول أفكر ورا مسببات some of those decisions. So I never lived abroad في حياتي except for vacations and business trips. So the big move was from Jeddah to Riyadh, and I did that when I was 22. And it was supposed to be a short stint for a year for a particular job until something better comes along in Jeddah. I went in January the 18th, 1994, and I stayed for 28 years. I fell in love with it from the first month, and I think through hopping لوزارة الدفاع ووزارة الصحة ووزارة الثقافة هيئة المدن والمناطق الاقتصادية الخاصة هيئة تطوير محافظة I think I was searching for Saudi. I wanted to discover Saudi in a different sense, because there in those public sector jobs I met Saudis من كل المملكة, من الحسا, من الجنوب, من الشمال, من القصيم. And I got to learn very quickly in depth all the intricacies of the subcultures سواء في الببليك سيكتور أو سواء من مناطق المملكة المختلفة بأكلها بلكناتها بالparticularities حقها. And I think my dad الله يرحمه was like that. He was always fascinated with the rest of the country beyond نشرة الأحوال الجوية, but actually in depth. But like the alchemist, you go searching and then you end up where you started, because there is a treasure trove to be had. يمكن خرجت من جدة مغاضب ديك الأيام لأنه I felt إنه there were too many failures in a short span of time, and I felt like I deserved to win and I deserved to make it. But I learned along the way that those failures, those humble beginnings were huge fuel and vocabulary and glossary for what was to come, and I keep learning every day more about myself, more about people around me.
طب, where are you today?
How do you mean?
In career-wise?
Yes, sorry.
Classified?
So I that was a bit overarching. So yes, so the last 15 years, I did advisory roles, C-suite type engagements. So mostly within تواصل مؤسسي, public relations, communications. I ran an international program for الصحة for about 5 years. I was very fortunate to do a 1-year stint في الثقافة مع اللجنة الوطنية that was working with the UNESCO. So it was a year of heritage and pushing it throughout international registration or recognition, and that was really, really intriguing. Right now, I run a small team that's working on transformation enablement and advocacy within one of the semi-private, semi-governmental organizations.
Okay. Mari, confidential ولا؟
I'm just leaving it at that.
طيب أحمد, tell us يعني how can we benefit من أحمد? How can anyone benefit من أحمد في أي مجال? We come to Ahmed for what? if we need what?
Okay, so yeah, maybe يعني باختلاف شوية عن most of the other contenders, I am a hardcore, die-hard generalist. I was a generalist when it was frowned upon, but then I stayed long enough to where it was much sought after. I do a lot of spin doctoring and problem solving. Most of the time, now lately, other than the occasional coaching, which I really enjoyed حتى مع ال SLS as a part-time activity, I'm always involved at the early on in the creative process. So ideation, lots of input, and lots of operation style work, follow through. I like to, make dips from high altitudes and keep my hand in the game at all times عشان أحس بنبض الرollouts والتطبيق. Yeah, but mostly, look, you can, if it has to do with design, with creative writing, with public relations, with corporate culture, transformation enablement, change management, I'm your guy.
طيب.
Songwriting.
Songwriting.
Yeah, film score compositions.
طيب, then you brought this up كمان. يلا tell us شوية كمان على ال art side of Ahmed.
So
when did you discover أصلاً موضوع
I think it started with بالرسم, and then it slowly graduated to other formats. أبويا الله يرحمه كان حافظ للشعر بشكل مهيب, يعني يمكن فوق 100,000 بيت من غير مبالغة. One of the first series of books I was paid to read كان كتاب الأغاني لأبو الفرج الأصفهاني, 26 volume when I was في أولى متوسط, but the money was too good, so it had to be done, which made فصار في ولع understanding how the language progressed من الشعر الجاهلي لبوست إسلام للحداثة وغيره. أظن إنه في قرارة نفسه هو أدرك كمتذوق ومحب للشعر إنه هو ما عنده القريحة. He will never be a poet. So he was pumping me, hoping إنه أنا اللي حصير الأوفسبرينج اللي حيكون شاعر. I think I failed him because I channeled all my energy to music composition and to instruments. At one point he fought it, and then he sort of gave in. And then I wanted to understand composing and what makes a song last longer than the actual playing itself. So زي أي شخص ملقوف في سن صغيرة, I was more interested in writing before I could even understand how the genre or the music or the instrument or the whole hobby worked. But watching people retire around me, watching what happened also to my dad and other people, I realized very early on that I needed a parallel life. I needed a parallel hobby, and not just an occasional fishing trip, or I needed to do it in such a dedicated, geeked out fashion that it almost becomes a parallel universe inside me, which ended up being the case. There's about 4 or 5 albums that weren't released that are going to be released this year. There's a documentary film about me and a friend of mine. سجلنا أول ألبوم of original Western songs in 92. بتذكروا Music Master يمكن. It sold 16,000 copies. وقتها ما كان في social media, music wasn't really pushed. We bagged it. He became a pilot. I moved to Riyadh. You know what? You stick around long enough, somebody came and did a documentary film about it because we were there ahead of everybody. We re-released an anniversary version of it, and I'm currently producing a young band in Jeddah called Strangers. Very interesting people. So I'm becoming sort of like the grandfather figure on the scene, but it still keeps me involved. Several projects with film scoring as well.
Nice. يعطيك العافية أحمد. طيب, we need to open now a Q&A مع أحمد. Who wants to start first? تفضل.
I think ما وفيت حقك لما you gave about your story. بس I think الانجل الارتستيك اللي فيك with that parallel life, how can you make it a centerpiece? لأنه it is you. That's the Ahmad where he's kind of hiding behind all those. How could that Ahmad come to life in this hill? And yeah, that becomes not just a parallel life. This becomes your life because you've got a lot to offer. You've got a lot to offer.
Thank you. I think الغشش اللي كان صاير أو المواربة أو الكومبرومايز آخر 20 سنة was whatever the impact أو الأثر حق الهواية هذه الفنون والقراءة والفنون بكل أنواعها، وكلنا نتفق إنه فيها تهذيب شوية روحي وفيها وتخلي الإنسان شوية more delicate وتنمي الذكاء العاطفي أكثر I think a lot of that stuff seeped لأنه أنت بتصنع العمل والعمل يصنعك and it's a two-way thing. And I think I brought in a lot of those sort of undefined ولا undetectable values or after effects into the way I ran my teams. I led work during the daytime, the way I looked at my career trajectory. So they all والعمل والالتزام به كضرورة وكواجب وكعبادة, that discipline also seeped into الهواية لأنه صار فيها التزام بمواعيد بجداول industry like. So I think they both equally cross-pollinated لدرجة that's hard to distinguish for me between the two. Yeah.
Question? تفضل.
طيب بخصوص الباراليل لايف والهوبيز، يعني انت تكلمت على انه الواحد يكون عنده هوبيز غير الحياة اللي بيعيشها day to day. في مسك برضو تكلموا على أهمية الريتشارجينج بلان وقديش هذا الشيء very healthy عشان الواحد يوازن الورك لايف بالانس. أنا شخصيا يعني الآن في بداية الأربعينات، ويمكن ما فكرت في حياتي إيش هي الهوبيز حقتي. أنا حياتي عبارة عن شغل بيت شغل، فما عندي أي هوبيز seriously other than going to the gym. okay. إيش حتكون نصيحتك لشخص ما شاء الله أنت اليوم عندك هوبيز كثيرة، إيش حتكون نصيحتك لشخص ما عنده هوبيز وأنا started to recognize إنه الموضوع غلط, it's not healthy. إيش تكون نصيحتك إنه الواحد يقدر يكتشف الهوبيز حقته ولا يعيش هوبيز it's never too late. okay. وما أعرف من اللي جالسين اليوم قديش منهم أو منكم عنده هوبيز فعليا other than الحياة الطبيعية. ما أعرف هل أنا جزء من الماجوريتي ولا لا. okay. So that's the point.
Thank you. يلا افتنا.
I think nothing, at least in my world, in my life, وأنا كنت بسمع بحرص شديد لريان لما كان بتكلم, nothing came easily. ما كنت موهوب بالفطرة ولا في شيء. I recognized it very easily. في ناس كانت تمسك آلات وبسرعة تسلك, and I have to take the long way home in everything. في الكورة, في الدراسة, في ده. But I tell you what, if you go with the all or nothing in anything, حتى في الشغل, it bounces right back at you, right? So everything counts in small amounts. I've learned the hard way. Like for example, I tell you what, I at one point I weighed 125 kilos. My back was threatened, my knees it wasn't fun at all. I gave myself 5 years to lose the weight. I lost it over 5 years. Why? لأنه I chipped away at it in small proportions, so I gave myself the time. Same thing with an instrument, with a hobby, with an activity. I think instead of going all out, explore and try your hand out at different things. And that's where passion, I think, gets born. People talk about passion gets born when between you and yourself realize, well, I'm really good at this from the get-go. And the more you do it, you're good at it. And all of a sudden, I'm passionate about this. Well, you have people are not passionate about stuff that they suck at, right? They're passionate about stuff that they're good at and they get better at. So take a pick, erase, rewind, scratch, until you find something that is perfectly not related to what you do for a living and the gym, and just pick at it very slowly. It's a lot of fun. It's really enjoyable, I think.
So explore slowly and test. خلاص. Test your feelings, test your...
Because you'll never know unless you go. So I was always fascinated with people who did, let's go to extreme examples, right? Just for entertainment purposes. I was always fascinated with people who did backbending. So me and my wife went and did yoga for 4 years nonstop. Backbending. I just wanted to understand how that worked. Now what happened, our bodies were better for it during that period, but then we met a lot of people. Going back to this positive, meaningful networking. And then I always thought golfing was a very unnatural sport. Totally, it goes against every normal human body. So I decided to, check that out. Did golfing for 2 years. I met so many interesting people and I forged a lot of relationships. And I think the bottom line is the after effect of خوض غمار التجارب هذه is when you go, you'll know more about it and about yourself, and you always meet. I always say meeting people is easy. You always meet people. It's great.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask on the same question. You said you did 4 years of yoga, 2 years of golfing. Now, obviously, that you no longer do them, حسب فهمي من كلامك, so it wasn't your cup of tea. But 4 years, 2 years, it's not like trying something. يعني أنا لما أقول I want to try something, أروح أجربها واحدة مرة. أروح أسوي بادل مثلا، عجبني ما عجبني. Okay, دحين عاملين group paddle. Go مثلا scuba diving. I'll do it once. I'll try it. If I like it, I'll do it again. 4 years, mashallah. So, yani, explain that. Explain that. It's no longer it became
I think one of my superiors, I can't remember which jobs, one of the last 3 or 4 jobs, and it was a very tense moment, and I actually caught myself telling him, you know what, طال عمرك, I think I'm the most patient person I have ever met. فقال لي, excuse me? I think I'm the most patient person I've ever met. I think, and I take that from my mom. أمي إنسانة مرة صبورة وتدي الشيء وقته, and we don't quit. Madam, we signed up, we do it, and you stay with that, and something happens. There is that threshold, that scratch point, and I'll use the weight loss parallel. جاء وقت كان very depressing. أول 12 كيلو تمام great، حركت السفن، اتصدقت بالثياب والحوايج عشان أزنق نفسي, and then nothing happened. And I'll tell you, Dina, it's the kind of nothing happens that causes you إنك تضبي أغراضك وتبطلي. But I stuck with it, and a quarter later رجع. البلاتو. بس حتى with a hobby, whether it's piano lessons or whether it's yoga, something with the repetition, with the perseverance, with mindfulness, something happens, it picks up and it goes. In my case كمان يمكن كان فيها نوع من البطر المعنوي أو النزق الثقافي, which is okay, yeah, فهمت, okay, good, now I want to explore something, but not explore it superficially though. No, really get into it, commit, and learn. Not fake it till you make it. Actually, no. Learn the ropes on all of it. عشان كده واحدة من الأشياء الرائعة اللي من مخرجات Misk Leaders 2030 كانت how meaningful all of this is. Like, let me tell you something. كثير من leaders out there بيتشدقوا في accounts about Simon Sinek or emotional intelligence. A lot of people are echoing a lot of sentiments and things, and you probe closer, and they're not like that day to day. لا مع فرقهم ولا in the way they run business, ولا in the way they treat people, but it's a nice tagline. People use it and do it. So instead of trying to adopt Simon Sinek in one go, أو إني أتحول لواحد من الصحابة in 24 hours, which I can't, again, you nip at it gradually. So مثل قيمة من القيم حقت Simon Sinek, I work hard on it. I try to really observe myself applying it مع فريقي, with people that I'm coaching, with people that I'm working, and then you just build up and acquire it instead of an all-in approach. And it's fun. It's fun in the working. It's fun, I think.
Thank you. تفضلي.
So, dear Ahmed, I love the initial introduction actually, because I rarely find leaders that identify themselves through their love for their family and others. So your reflection of, with compassion, the name of each family member and how you relate to them, it's impeccable. What I would like to know is, you have so much talent in you. What do you do to pass it on to the new generations, whether they're your immediate children or your nephews or cousins? What practices you have within your household? If it's too private a question, please forgive me. But as leaders, our roles are not just in our community, our immediate circles. So I would love to know how you pass on your passion to your loved ones.
Well, you're hitting a nail on the head. One of the current obsessions, خصوصا آخر سنتين, is بنتي is 17, ولدي is 15, and I don't think I passed 30% to them of what أبوي وأمي passed to me, which is unfortunate, unfair, and painful. But I'm trying to. I'm hoping some of the genetics and mimicking and وتقليدنا sort of helps. But some days I feel such حسرة إنه نفسي يكون يوصل في مرحلة يكون في downloading عشان أشبك كل الكتب اللي قريتها وكل اللي استفدته من أبوي وأمي و every leader I worked with, everybody that inspired me, and just give it to them already عشان إيش كده أكون الأمانة أديتها وخلاص. But obviously life doesn't work that way. Look, it doesn't work out the way you plan, because kids have their own character وكينونتهم, whether you like it or not. We're just sort of chaperones. So أول شيء دانيا وزيد سووه as an act of rebellion, بدأوا piano زي ما أنا بدأت, and then they switched to trumpet and saxophone just to go totally in the opposite direction. I was never an athlete. Zaid is probably one of the top athletes in his. So everybody is taking a different route. We converge intellectually وفي أشياء معينة of that. But look, you part with as much as you can, but it's almost, I think it's almost intensely selfish or egotistical to just want to replicate what I think was a good thing or them, because actually it takes us to a point لما زوجتي حملت في دانيا شوية كنت ملخبط كده ومفجوع, ف I called my dad سألته الواحد ليش يجيب بزورة. بس I thought, you know what, he might as well يعني يسري عني. فقال لي الواحد يجيب بزورة. وقلت له listen, حتقول لي سنة الحياة وذا يعني menu one is done, I know. Give me something of substance. قال الواحد يجيب بزورة عشان يطلع أحسن منه. And I thought, and it took him a second, and I thought that was very poignant. So overall, instead of obsessing على الديتيلز هذه, المركب الجينيريك push is إنهم hopefully يكونوا أحسن.
I have a dad too, and that also was the memory was also funny. So great answer. Thank you so much. Are you happy with where you're at right now in your life? Have you found that blissful happiness?
I tell you that one of those, that H word just gets me. So I'm one of those weirdos who don't do happiness. I think it's such a fleeting concept, and in the grand mainstream narrative right now, it depends on externalities so much that I don't have that much ego ولا أعصاب to spare. So I'm content because happiness is fleeting. زي الزكمة زي الزعل زي الداء. لكن أنا يس في حالة رضا. لو قدرت مو أوصفها، لو قدرت again أشبكها على motion graphic video, it would overwhelm.
لا أنا حقول لك إيش حتسوي بيها بعد شوي.
طيب.
حقول لك إيش حتسوي.
That is happiness. إن كنت راضي that happiness.
Content or extremely joyful. هذا تعريف الhappiness.
Extremely joyful. I like that.
It's either happiness تعريف or either being content والحالة من الرضا or extremely joyful. يعني it's all above the line. Negative feelings هذا تتحول positive.
And sometimes you run across gems you neglect, and then لما ترجع في U-turn you're like, so I feel a need or a duty to part with this. I struggled for the longest time with what is the most important thing in life. الحقيقة اللي خلاني أفكر في الثوت هذا اللي عبد الله قالوا عن الجيم والشغل وده. And you know what? That just fluctuated. It changed مو every decade, it changed every half decade. Keeping up with schoolmates كانت درجاتهم أقل مني بس صاروا أنجح وأغنى مني. You know how futile that is. Then no, it was with people who were better looking, who were no, but it was with more money, more car. And as I aged gracefully and ungracefully in some decades, that seemed to be a changing sort of list. Along the way, amongst the noise, my wife once said that according to her, the most important thing in life was positive relationships. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. It just sounded like something Rannan. You know what? Full circle now, I look back على كل الوظائف وعلى كل الengagements with the endless roster of people I met that impacted, that touched me and I touched their life, and everything that happened over 52 years. The most important thing in life is positive relationships. Hands down. Because and you can take that to an obsessive level, because a positive relationship with your maker, with family, with friends, يعني قصدي it permeates, positive relationship permeates beyond the immediate impression you have when you utter the words. And I think إذا هذه زبطت, pretty much everything else sort of just follows somehow.
Beautiful أحمد. تفضل.
ما قلت لنا إيش صار في الجنيهات؟
So
اشترى بيها الانسترومنت.
أمي طلع كلامها صح. Flash forward. Yeah, you know what? You're right, because the closeout is an art, huh? البitch والrollout is one thing. The closeout is king, man. So flash forward to 88, 89. It got sold واشتريت 240 هارتوب بيضة بطاسات بيضة. And I was a high schooler who bought his own car. طبعا وقتها it didn't bear any significance. But in hindsight, when I think about it now, yeah, that was pretty bad. Yeah. 88. Yeah.
موجودة ولا بعدها؟
لا بعدها.
طيب any other question؟ تفضل هنا.
الله يرحم الوالد والوالدة. الوالدة عايشة الله يحفظها ويرحم الوالد. وأعتقد القراءة اللي تكلمت عنها باينة في عمقك، في عمق كلماتك وفي عمق أفكارك. والله إن شاء الله يجعلها أجر ليهم. إحساسي بيك إنك أنت إنسان فيك عمق كبير وعندك potential جدا ضخم. من أساسيات القيادة اللي أنا كده مؤمن فيها يقول لك leadership is about getting extraordinary results from ordinary people. I think you still have a lot of gifts that is untapped. What's your plan to unlock your potential? Do you have a vision for yourself? Yeah, probably we're going through the same age
countdown و challenging ourselves about what we can do more. يعني I feel you're a gifted person. دائما قالوا البرنامج هذا discovers an unregular leaders. You are an unregular leader. You have a lot of potential. What's your vision? And I think there is a lot there that is still not exploited.
Thank you. I really, your kindness is not lost on me. So one of the seminal moments later in the game was getting accepted. So again, look, I don't suffer low self-esteem. I'll warn you, I'm full of myself just enough to get by. But something told me that having grown up in humble beginnings, I could never afford to go to INSEAD or HBR. I missed the boat حق البعثات لأنه I was too old for that. Anyway, look, for all intents and purposes, I was like, okay, I don't think I'm gonna make the cut. So I made the cut. And so when I walked in, again, I was very fortunate, and I'm sure every cohort says that about their cohort, but C2A was just was just a mind-boggling experience. And so I met these people, and I thought, wow, again, مهما سويت intentionally, I would have never been fortunate to meet all of these folks. And let me give you an example. في كده unrealized dreams. I knew who Ziad was, because in his area he was a legend, an urban myth of sorts. But how do you meet somebody like that conventionally? I knew who Suraqa was, for sure. And I thought that was, لما جيت داومت أول يوم جلست لقيته جنبي, I was like, oh. You know what? This networking thing here, this is really going to work very well for me. Thank you, Misk. I'm a prime benefactor. من ثاني segment في module, في أول يوم في module 1, and again, because I'm not visual, I realized something very brilliant was happening. Yes, the professors or the instructors, that were facilitating the class, yes, they were parting with this knowledge, rote style, that's based on the taxonomy, right? So you sort of know what to expect, and it's very interesting. وفيها معارف جديدة أنا ما كنت أعرفها مسبقا, فبركة إني انقبلت وجيت. But you know what? This was happening at any given time 20-30 ways. بعد أول حصة لقيت الانبوت المداخلات اللي من طارق خوشحال وسراقة ومنال مقوشي وده, in some cases are just as heavy and profoundly informative. And so I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna minute this, old school, because what they're saying for the class I can refer to later in but what these guys are saying will dissipate in the airwaves. So the famous voice notes started, and I started writing كل الانتراكشنز اللي بتصير في الكلاس عشان اتذكر الvaluable input اللي قالته فلانة أو قالوا فلان. This way, for me, over 11 months, الله يبارك في القيادة وفي مسك والقائمين عليها, I got to learn from 6 world-class organizations who designed the curriculum, and I would learn from another 48 people live as we went. And I'll tell you, I don't know of anything by design that is this intense and rewarding as this. The other amazing life-turning seminal thing about Misk Leaders 2030 is تعقيبا على شيء قاله أخوي ريان, إنه يعني لما وصلت 49-48 I realized إنه this level of camaraderie, friendship وحب وصحوبية وأخوة اللي صارت في أولى ابتدائي وأولى متوسط وفضلوا أحياء وفضلوا أصحاب, pretty much this is it. Your window gets closer. حتقابل ناس حليلين جروبات, but I will never have anything as intense as حاتم ومحمد الناس اللي I have known since because it takes a long time and a lot of the 48 people in C2A over those 11 months I gained 50 people as intensely emotionally and brotherhood واخوان واخوات ولحمه جباره 50 ها. and I couldn't hack one or two additional ones to add to my list. حقيقه هذا الشيء برعوا فيه مسك by design, by positioning. I'm still reeling from it to this day.
Wow, actually you realizing هذا الموضوع بهذه الطريقة and reading it in this way, that's amazing. and actually صراحة eye opener حتى للليدرز اللي شغالين الآن في الكوهورتس وما خلصوا to see this perspective of you and how did you actually learn from ال 50 people اللي كانوا surrounding you.
I passed the notes to some classes, by the way.
والله. Then I think you need to put it somewhere where everybody can actually access it. طيب, last question. في أي أحد عنده أي سؤال عشان there is something we need to do. خلاص؟ طيب. Ahmad, thank you so much. It was really inspiring. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything, for the information and كل النصايح and thank you. ما أقدر أقول غير كذا. Thank you so much.
شكرا.